morning, students. Today we have to continue the ninth chapter, Development Experiences in India. We are continuously learning the lesson. Today we have to discuss about the fiscal reform. Okay, let us see the fiscal reform. Fiscal reform is a key element in the stabilization effort was to restore the fiscal discipline. Whatever they extending and contrasting here, it means reduction of fiscal deficit to the extent of just 3% of GDP. The deficit should be corrected by the reform. The extent of just 3% of GDP should be reduction by the deficit fiscal, which was suggested by fund bank policies. In this way, the budget aimed at containing government expenditure and augmenting revenues, reversing the downtrend in the share of direct taxes to the total tax revenues, and curbing conspicuous consumption. So conspicuous consumption means what is that? Continuous consumption and congested consumption. Some of the important policies initiatives and introduced for correcting the fiscal imbalances were reduction in fertilizer subsidy. What are the subsidies given by the government? It should be reduced. This is their aim. Reduction of fertilizer subsidy, abolition of subsidy on sugar, and disinvestment of a part of the government's equity holding in select public sector undertakings. Gradually, expenditure on welfare measures were reduced. Tax on corporate sectors were reduced, and tax on poor people were increased. This is their main aim for reforming the fiscal policies. What are they saying here? The reduction of subsidies. Whatever the subsidies given by the central government as well as the state government to the public, it is all reduced by the fiscal reform. And subsidies given to the cash crops farmer, which means the sugar cultivators. Subsidies on sugar and disinvestment of part of the government's equity. Whatever the government equity shared in the sugar department, sugar companies. So that and all, the holdings in select public undertakings, the public sector undertakings. Whatever the public sector undertaking, the departments, it may be the sugar company or agro-based industries, everything, disinvestment taken from the fiscal reforms. Gradually, expenditure on welfare measure schemes. So that and also reduced. And tax on corporate sectors were reduced. Increasing and important given to the corporates and the sectors and all, it should be reduced by the reform. And also the more concentration given on the poor people will be increased. These are the fiscal reforms taken by the government. And goods and services. Then goods and services tax, GST. What is GST? We know that GST is the tax which is levied on the goods and services produced in a country. GST is defined as the tax levied when a consumer buys a goods or services. It is proposed to be a comprehensive indirect tax levied on manufacture, sale and consumption of goods and as well as the services. GST aims to replace all indirect taxes levied on goods and services by Indian central government as well as the state governments. Okay, all under one umbrella. This is the concept for the GST. So the aim of the GST is replace all the indirect taxes and levied one taxes to all the manufacturing goods and services. GST would be eliminate the cascading effect of taxes on the production and distribution of goods and services. It also a one-point tax. It is called as one-point tax. This is not unlike VAT. The VAT is, we know that the VAT is value added tax. Every section it will be added the tax which is prevailed in the before the GST. That was called a multi-point tax. So the GST is not like VAT, which is one-point tax. Understood? The goods and services tax Act was passed in the Parliament on 29th March 2017. The Act came into effect on 1st July 2017. The motto is One Nation, One Market, One Tax. This is their motto for started this GST. This and all coming under one mark. Understood? Next we have to move current GST rates in India. What are the reforms happened or making by the central government on the goods and services tax GST? They provided the slabs, 5 slabs they provided 0%, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. The 0%, 5%, 12% and 18%, then 28% depends upon the various goods and services they providing. What are the advantages of the GST? Advantages of the GST removing cascading tax effect. So this is continuous tax removed by the GST. Single point tax. This is bring the idea single point tax. The single tax only paying by the manufacturer from the manufacturing area. Higher threshold for registration. So it brings higher threshold for registration and it is easy to registration in the online. Composition scheme for small business. So this also bring the composition scheme for small business and all coming under the GST. They also going to register in the online very easy. Online simpler procedure under GST. So online also very simple to register the GST bills and counterfoils, everything. Defined treatment for e-commerce. So this is bring the e-commerce tendency among the sellers and buyers. Increase the efficiency in logistics and regulating the unorganized sectors. Okay, it should be regulating the unorganized sectors and all. The unorganized sector not coming under this GST. The regulated, the rules and regulation followed by the companies and sectors only coming under this GST. Monetary and financial sector reforms. We have seen trade reform and fiscal reforms. Next we have to discuss about the monetary and financial sector reform. It aimed at doing away with the interest rate distortions and rationalizing the structure of lending rates. Whatever the lending rates taken into account in the commercial banks as well as the RBI. These are all reformed by the government. The new policy tried in many ways to make the banking system more efficient. For better efficient work given by the bank, the new policies are taken by the government or introduced by the government, which is reform. Okay, after 1991, whatever reform they made in trade as well as the fiscal, now the financial and monetary sector. Through the banking system, the efficient banking system, the policy will be changed. What are the reserve requirements? What are the reserve requirements doing by the commercial bank? That and all set by the and reformed by the government. Reduction in statutory liquidity ratio SLR and cash reserve ratio CRR. This and all should be reduced. This recommended by Narasimhan Committee report in 1991. It was proposed to cut down the SLR from 38.5% to 25% within a time span of 3 years. Within 3 years, the SLR rate reduced by the Narasimhan Committee report. How much? 38.5 to 25%. Similarly, it was proposed that CRR be brought down to 3 to 5% over a period of 4 years. This is the reforms made by the government. Interest rate liberalization. Earlier, RBI controlled the interest rates payable on deposits, the interest rates which could be charged for bank loans. These are all liberalized by the reform. and greater competition among public sector, private sector, and foreign banks, and elimination of administrative constraints. So, the greater competition going on in the three sectors. What are they? Here in our country, public sector and private sector, along with them, the foreign sector also came, and then foreign banks. Through these sectors, the elimination of administration constraints and liberalization of bank branch licensing policy in order to rationalize the existing branch network. Okay, these are the conditions reformed by the government after 1991. What are they? Providing the license to the commercial banks and rationalizing the existing branch network. With the existing branch network reformed and liberalization also given to the commercial banks. Banks were given freedom to relocate branches and open specialized branches. So the commercial banks liberalized and freedom given to them by the reform. They can open the specialized branches and at anywhere. Guidelines for opening new private sector banks. So the new private sector banks, suppose they are opening any new branches in any places, the guidelines also given by the reforms committee. New accounting norms regarding classifications of assets and provisions of bad debt were introduced in tune with the Narasimha Committee report. Whatever the debt, the lost debt, the bad debt, and provisions of asset, the classifications of asset, everything assigned by the Narasimha Committee to the commercial bank. These are the monetary and financial sector reforms happened in banks. Okay, the reforms after the Narasimha Committee report 1991. These are the measures taken by the government on the banks. Understood? Once India was rebuked for its Hindu rate of growth, a term used by Raj Krishna to refer to low rate of economic growth. The GDP growth rate of India is very much appreciated after 1991 policy. This growth is also due to changes in accounting the systems, whatever system reformed by the government. That's why the increased GDP growth rate has failed to alleviate the miseries of the common people and to reduce the socio-economic and environmental imbalances. So the basic problems of unemployment, poverty, ill health and inequalities remain unsolved. Okay, whatever the GDP increased in the Indian economy after the reforms of trade, fiscal policy and monetary and financial reforms, everything taken by the government, the basic problems of unemployment, poverty, ill health and inequalities remain unsolved in India. We completed this lesson. Go through the lesson topic by topic. You go through the